Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SportsKhabri YouTube channel. I am Anshuman Joshi, and today I'm joined by Kratik Malhotra. He is Director of Sports Science and Analytics at Texas A&M Football. That is American football, mind you, and not soccer, as we are going to discuss later in the podcast. So, Kratik has a lot of experience with conflating the two ideas of sports science and football. So this interjection of technology and sports is something that we are seeing evolving over the past decade and a half quite severely. And we thought that we'll keep India in mind and talk to Kritik about this today. So, Kritik, once again, thank you so much for coming to us on our podcast. So, let's just dive straight into it. And before we start talking about what India's scene is in sports science analytics, uh, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about what is it that you currently do, and how did that job, how did those set of job, how did your repertoire essentially came about?
Anshuman, firstly, thanks for having me. Um, it's a pleasure to be on here. Um, so I studied engineering, like most Indians do. Like they say, we first study engineering, then we figure out what we want to do with our lives.
As
So,
an engineer, I can agree to that. Yes.
so we, so I studied engineering, got in, and I was in my second year of engineering. I was studying electronics, but my specialization was AI. I'm talking 2009, 2010, like people hadn't even heard of it as much, but it was, and now it's like the new buzzword, So, uh, but even when I was studying engineering, I was already working in sports. So I've had like multiple roles. I've worked as a journalist. I've hosted halftime shows. I've worked in marketing. I've worked in sales. And I worked as an analyst. Did a lot of stuff with a bunch of I clubs, and you know we and then I went to the US. I went to study sport management, and when I did go abroad, I uh, I focused on sports analytics and took a lot of courses from the business school. And now what I'm doing, I'm basically merging the two, and yeah, it's awesome to work in sports tech, and it's even better to work for a football team. So, dream job, if you want to call it.
It is indeed a dream job because working in media, you hear so many times about people talking about how much people ask them essentially about how to conflate the two, tech and sports. So, on that end, I wanted to ask you: is your interest in sports something that came about only after you went into college, or is it something that you always had? Like you always had an idea that okay, I would like to work in sports in some capacity someday, regardless of whether it's tech heavy or not.
Anshuman, so I was that kid. Have you ever seen like kids waiting outside team hotels and outside team buses waiting for players to get down? I was one of
Hmm.
those kids. I'd
Right.
be in the lobbies, and uh, whether it was Sachin, whether it was Ganguly, whether it was Dravid, is a big fan. I'd go to all the training sessions that I could get into. Uh, so sports was always there. Like I come from a family where nobody played sports. I mean, they played sports for fun, but nobody played sports at a club level or definitely not professionally. But uh, I think somewhere I knew that I always wanted to get into sports, and that's why even when I was studying engineering, every time I'd look at something and I'd be like, all right, how do I relate this to sports? And a lot of those jobs, even if it was just writing jobs that came about, uh, were out of passion, were out of love for the game. So um, my first job did come when I was studying engineering, third year of engineering. However, the passion for sports had always been there. So
Right. So, could you tell us a bit about? So, this now we are coming into the main idea of our discussion, which is understanding where India stands as far as implementation of data and science in sports is concerned. So, tell us a bit about the work that you have done with both the US clubs and the Indian clubs, and what difference does it exist, if at all, between the way that sports science is viewed in the US and the way the sports science is used and viewed as in India.
see, um, I'll start off with my job in the US. So I've been working for over a decade. I've consulted NFL teams, I've consulted NBA teams, and I've for the past 10 years I've been working for two premier college football teams. With my role right now, so I'm the director of sports science and analytics. Um, the first part of the job is the sports science aspect. So I deal with peaking, helping the strength and conditioning staff, the athletic training staff to peak an athlete's performance, the coaching staff to peak an athlete's performance, um, whether it's pushing a guy, whether it's pulling him back, whether it's deciding how many reps he's going to get on a particular day. Um, I also deal with injury prevention. So, um, we all of our athletes wear GPS monitors. It's, you know, I remember this was 2012 when I started working with GPS monitors. We were the first organization, first team in the country that got GPS units and GPS monitors. And uh, in India, I would tell my friends, about GPS monitors and how, these 300-pound dudes are wearing sports bras, and people wouldn't believe me. And but now you have basically athletes all over the world doing it, and it's fantastic. That's the sports. Also, like in terms of injury prevention, we do hamstring testing with Node boards. We have force plates. All of our athletes have sensors in their helmets that tracks impacts and concussions. All of our athletes have wear Aura rings, which monitor your sleep, your resting heart rate. So we know what time an athlete's going to bed, what time he's waking up. Um, all of that helps us cut down soft tissue injuries. All of that helps us peak an athlete's performance, knowing where an athlete is at, how much do we need to push him, when do we need to pull him back. Obviously, the grind is very important, but you got to be smart about it. Uh, it's also huge because you know as a parent, if you are looking at a kid, you want your child to go to an organization where he's been taken care of 100%, that you don't have to worry. All of our athletes wear heart rate monitors. So if an athlete's heart rate goes above a certain threshold for a certain amount of time, we make sure that I'm on the walkie talkie with the sports medicine staff, and we make sure we pull him back so that he's good to go again. All of our practice, every session is monitored real time. So that's huge. So that's the sports science aspect of my job. So I deal with about 7 sports techs in there. The sports analytics of my job, a part of my job, deals with a lot of video coding. So so games are obviously video coded. Back in the day, soccer had Frozone uh, and match analysis. Now you have stats and a few other platforms. Um, all of that data is always Pro Football Focus for American football. All of that data is available online. But what we do that's different is we break down every single practice. So the number of completions, number of incompletions, number of tackles, every single stat, how you get on any of these forms, like we do that for practice. So that's one aspect. The second is, and that's where my engineering side comes in for the next one. It's using AI to to break down uh, to break down an athlete's film. So if you're recruiting an athlete and you want to know, if you find a clip on YouTube or Huddle, as we have it in the US, you find a clip and you want to know how fast is this kid running? Is he a good fit for us to come and play for us? Um, or if you're looking at an opponent and you want to do matchups, you know, you can do that. And all of that is done through AI. Also, um, biomechanics, uh, a lot of stuff. If you give me a video, you can pull the exact biomechanics angles for each guy straight from video. So I mean, you don't need sensors on him, you don't need anything. And um, especially the computer vision and getting speeds and acceleration, change the directions for any athlete that we see on tape has been. has been a huge success. And so, and then obviously you have the football analytics part of it. So what does a team do? What do the tendencies look like? Uh, you know, how can we better prepare for them? Um, so that's basically my role in the US. In terms of where Indian clubs are, there are a few clubs that use sports tech. Bangalore FC is one, and they've done a phenomenal job for the past 8 or 9 years. I mean, the first ones to get GPS monitors, Stat Sports. Uh, they started working with Stat Sports, I think, in 2014 or 15, and since then they've just gone up. Um, they've they've been very good at hiring sports scientists and sports analysts, and fantastic. When there are a few clubs that use it, Reliance with the new youth organization foundation that they started, doing a phenomenal job. I was there last week. Phenomenal job. Um, the thing about, I think, any organization is that everybody needs to be on the same page. Working for the head coach, Jimbo Fisher, that I work for, I think that's been the greatest blessing. Because if the man that you work for doesn't believe in you, you can do the most phenomenal work in the world. It's not going to get used. And I think that's where Reliance and Bangalore FC and a couple more clubs in India have done such a good job. Uh, you have Sports Science Center in Bangalore. Uh, they're doing a really good job. They're testing kids all over the country, trying to scout them, prepare them for Asian Games, prepare them for Olympics. A few other organizations. India is getting there. It's not. There are some teams that are using it. It's and they're doing a good job. It's just not as widespread as you would see in, I think, a lot of the world, at least Europe and the US and Australia. But I mean, it's only going up from here. So uh, there's so much potential. And I everybody that I've spoken to that's come from abroad, coaches that have come from abroad to coach here and everything, they say, I mean, you look at 12, 13, 14-year-olds in India, and they can compete with literally anybody, in the world. Athletically, these kids have the acceleration, they have the change of direction. Um, we just need to develop them, you know, after they're 12, 13, 14, so that in about 4, 5, 6 years' time, they can take on anybody that's out there. And I think India is on the right track.
Right. So you say that it's the 13, 14-year-olds at that point of their developmental cycle, they can tackle with anyone else around the world. But when we talk about the adult side of things, the fully formed senior squads, they find themselves leaving a lot to be desired. So it's that later part of the development that I think India is lagging behind, right?
See, I've not worked with in India for years, so I don't really know what's going on. However, um, I think the future is very bright. Like it's not that we don't see kids. It's just that we haven't had success. I think once you have success, once you win games, I think you'll be good. I mean, you know, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, who thought we'd be winning medals at the Olympics? But we are. It's a gradual process. Like by the time a kid is 3, 4, 5 years old, a kid in Europe would pick up a football, like soccer ball. You know, um, with India, you don't. A kid ends up a kid. The first thing that a kid picks up is a cricket bat. You know, so and that's why you're so great. Like everybody plays cricket. We breathe cricket, and I think since IPL that you see the amount of talent India has had. And I think what IPL has done really, really good is it's helped scout amazing talent. And there's been such a huge pipeline. There was always that pipeline, I think, with Ranji, but IPL has just taken it to another level. And I think with India, like ISL is still very young as compared to some of the leagues abroad. Talk about Indian football, I think we'll get there. I think it's just gonna take a little bit of time, but I think we'll get there. There's a lot of desire. You see the amount of people who want to make it to the next level, who want to take India to the next level. And I'm not talking about people abroad, I'm talking about people who live here. the Reliances of the world, and so many other organizations. It's phenomenal. We're only gonna go for it. If you ask me, I think in about 15, 20 years, I mean, I think India is gonna be all right when it comes to international sports. Because I think the number one thing that you wanna see is progress. And
Mhm.
I left India 11 and a half years ago, and seeing how it was 11 and a half years ago and you see how it is now, it's night and day. Like, you know, I remember, playing football. I played for a third division club. I played a couple of games. We lost 6-0. I never played again. But we I remember training, and just the pitches that they were. Now you have astroturfs, and you find astroturfs everywhere. That's incredible, and you see that, like they say talent comes from the streets, right? You I mean, you give them the facilities. And I think India is putting like a good amount of money in that now. You give them the facilities. I think we'll be all right.
Right. So let's come back to the AI part of things because, like you said, when you started working in sports in general, when you came to college, AI was a very esoteric word. It was something that maybe the industry talked about itself. Now AI has become a buzzword. If NFT was the buzzword of last year, AI is the buzzword of this year. You have ChatGPT, you have Midjourney, and all sorts of AI generating from all sorts of content. So what makes me think in this moment is that with all these AI tools coming out and AI essentially booming at the rate that it is, what kind of future do we have in store for sports science and analytics? What direction do you think it's going to take with the kind of tools that we are seeing on the market now?
I think, I mean, I think the possibilities are endless. Think about this. With AI now, if the film quality is good, you can track how fast Pele is running or how fast Maradona is running, and you can compare him to, Ronaldo or Messi or any of our Indian kids. you know you can track their speeds, you can track their movement. You can think about this, right? India has millions of kids who play sports, but only like a few tens of thousands actually get looked at. When it comes to scouting, when it comes to recruiting, like, it can be such a huge difference. It's impossible for, like, an academy or an institution to go to every single town in India and scout these kids. But now with AI, you might be able to do that. All you need is a camera. You don't need anything else. Second, when it comes to injuries, now see, people talk about sports tech and everything. What people forget is sports tech is so expensive. GPS monitors are so expensive. Heart rate monitors are decently expensive. But I mean, if you want a top professional organization, it's very, very hard to afford these devices. A first place costs you a bomb, you know. However, if you have a simple camera or your phone, you might be able to, if you install the camera right, you might be able to get some of those GPS metrics, the distance your athletes have covered, the speeds that they're running in. Wherein if you're a school in India, and I'm talking a high school, 10th, 11th, 12th kids, like, you might be able to track their movements. You can push this data out to clubs in India, out to clubs abroad. And I mean, it can be huge. Like, the funny thing is, even right now we are just scratching the surface. You know, you don't know what. Also, like, if you're talking at a club level and a professional level, think about kids that you can, track from leagues in Spain, leagues in Japan, leagues in China, leagues in South Korea, you know, leads in Sri Lanka, and you can track if this kid does come to India, can he can he actually make it or not? Obviously, there's a huge psychological element to it that I think people often forget, and because if you don't know how a guy is gonna adapt, it's and if adaptation wasn't a thing, we all would be playing FIFA, these players, but the mental aspect is such a huge part. And but if you take that out, I mean, if you want to track an athletic ability of an athlete or skills, I mean, like the possibilities are endless, you know. And again, I think we're just scratching the surface as of now. I think you can do literally anything out there.
Right. So the thing you said, scratching the surface, I think that's quite important because when we when we even explore the idea of sports analytics, and when you think about pursuing sports analytics as a career or even as an educational program, you, at least that this has been my experience, that you find out that as far as official collegiate roadmaps are concerned, there is not a lot of it. People usually do what we do. They are very good at engineering and they have a passion for sports, like you yourself told about your own story. And then they bring the two together to create a very unique path for themselves, a path that is not a trodden one, a path that is not really followed by anyone. So both you and I, we have had that experience of being engineers in an engineering college in India at different levels, but in India all the same. And what my question here would be is what is the future for Indian sports analysts and Indian sports scientists, given how things are in the country right now, and given the kind of demand there currently exists outside of India as well. So, what can these aspirants do, given the fact that a roadmap does not really exist? You really have to make your own path, or essentially. So, what does the future look like?
See, if I have to give an advice to anybody that's out there, I think the first thing that I would say is learn, because I think we're still, and this is not like an Indian thing, this is global. Like the first thing you want to do is you want to make money and you want to get a job. You need to know, like when you start working in sports, your first job or your first couple of jobs are always free. And that's not because of, that you're not good at it. But the thing is, the demand is so much. Like everybody wants to work in sports. So a lot of organizations, it's like it's hard to get your foot in the door. So the first thing is, whether it's for free or, a paid position, learn and, try different things, right? My first job was a journalist because I thought that is what I wanted to do. A month in, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And tried something else, and I tried something else, and I tried something else. And I was working as an analyst with a couple of I League clubs, and I was like, I love this. Sitting down with the coaches, sitting down with the players, trying to helping them make decisions that can impact, the weekend's result. I mean, I was like, this is absolutely incredible, and that's what I want to do. So my first thing is going to be learn and try out different things. People, everybody thinks working in sports is glamorous and everything, and there is, I think, a certain amount of glamour, but it's hard work. I mean, you're talking about not getting off on weekends, working throughout the week, and that is because we play on the weekends, and the next day you're preparing for the next game. So it is hard work. So from that standpoint, if you're working in sports, don't be discouraged and don't be disappointed, and don't, and just literally forget about sleeping. Literally forget about sleeping. Work your hardest. And then, once you start making money, once you hit a certain level, you know, then see how it is. But learn. That's my number one thing. And it's always been for me. My one of my teachers told me, this is during the engineering days. He's like, everybody. She was like, people are getting employed, but they don't understand. Like everybody wants to get employed, but nobody wants to become employable. And that's going to be my number one thing. If you want to get a career in sports, learn everything that you can, so that if you want a job the next day, there is a job for you. The next thing I would say is take up opportunities. Like the amount of teams that are out there, the amount of clubs that are out there, the amount of schools that are out there. You know, you might think, who works for a school? You can, because that's going to give you valuable experience. Um, it's a different ball game, dealing with athletes. dealing with coaches, uh, dealing with support staff, and nothing goes to waste. Give it a shot. Just start working. Figure out what you want to do. I remember after I graduated engineering, my parents were like, "You have 1 year. You know, if you don't if you don't figure out what you want to do after 1 year, you're starting working as an engineer." So I tried so many things. And there's this one thing that really stuck, and I was like, "This is awesome. I'm gonna do this." And even when I went to the US, like I didn't know anybody who had gotten a job in the US working in sports, gotten their visa sponsored. Uh, I remember like my first few weeks in the US, I was as scared as I've ever been because my parents had taken loan, and I was like, well, what if it doesn't work out? But that added is an extra level of motivation. And first week, I went started working for the local soccer team, and I said, I worked on Prozone. You use Prozone? They said yes. And I said, okay, cool. Can I do some analysis? And I'll tell you what does the data look like. And that's how it started. So no job is small, because you learn, but just try to learn, become employable, and your success will come your way. Um,
Right. So that brings us to the end of this podcast. And Pratik, based on everything that we have discussed, your role, the work that you're doing in the US, the work that you have done in India, is there a final message that you would like to leave our viewers with?
with India, the future is bright, very, very bright. I think it's night and day. What you used to see and what you're seeing now. Just keep believing, and I know India is gonna shine. But um, what I will tell for future aspiring sports scientists and analysts are, India needs you. Like I just learn, just get in there, and be available when it's needed. And again, if there's anything that I can do, please feel free to reach out, whether it's helping anybody online or maybe some sort of an internship opportunity down the road with us, or just hit me up. You never know what opportunities open up. And yeah, but the future is very, very bright, and just keep believing and follow your dreams. Not many people do that. Just don't give up.
Follow your dreams, fellow sports aspirants. The future in India looks bright. Uh, Karthik, thank you so much once again for coming on here and talking to us. It was a wonderful pleasure talking to you and getting to know more about this side of things. And I hope to speak to you soon, somewhere down the line. And once again, thank you so much and take care.
Thanks, Anshu. I appreciate it very much.
That is all for this edition of the Sports Recovery podcast. We will be back very soon with another one. Thank you so much.